Hi guys, this is the Bipolar Hot Mess again. My second video on DBT. I feel like I should have some sort of like theme song or some music or something as an intro. What do you think? But yeah, this is my second video in the DBT series, and it's based off of this book, DBT Made Simple by Sheri something. You can see the last name right there. And so no, I gotta do the legal stuff here, okay? Because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, or a psychologist or anything like that. I don't have any license to practice anything. These videos are just information I've gotten from this book and my personal knowledge and interpretations, and so I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what I've gathered from the book and how I think the author's trying to convey it. So it's purely informational in nature, so I don't want you guys like going off of meds if your doctor has you on them. Don't want you going against your doctor's instructions or therapy plans. This is just purely informational in nature, so I just want to take care of all that before I get into this video, because I don't know if I mentioned that in the first one. But kind of going back to the DBT, it was initially started to be used with borderline personality disorder. And in order to understand how it works, we kind of have to look at the theory of how it started and like what it was intended to do and all of that stuff before we could kind of figure out how it applies to our own illness and how it's going to work best for us. So that means we're going to have to, when we talk about the theory, it's going to be we're going to have to talk about borderline personality disorder a little bit, and I wanted to make that clear so that you guys don't mistake me for talking about bipolar disorder and get kind of confused, like, what are you talking about? Because that's not bipolar, So I just want to let you know that the theory is based off of borderline personality disorder. So to understand it, we have to talk about the theory based on that. So we talked about emotional dysregulation the last time, which is the inability to regulate your emotions. And then emotional vulnerability, which was being born more emotionally sensitive than your peers. Research suggests that your ability to regulate your emotions is influenced by your environment. So that basically, the environment you grow up in, we learn from watching our parents or our caregivers or whoever's in the environment that we're growing up in. And that's kind of how we base, pretty much anything. It's a lot of just what we see when we're growing up. So there's a couple different environments that I'm going to go over to kind of give you a little bit of a better idea. The first one is the invalidating environment. When they talk about an invalidating environment, it's basically when you express your emotion, the people around you, your parents or siblings, whoever, the people around you, they judge you for feeling the way you're feeling. So they might say, like if you're crying, they'll say, oh my gosh, stop, you're overreacting, or they try to minimize or ignore your feelings, and it kind of feels like they're punishing you for talking about them. And they only respond to you when your negative feelings are escalated. Like if you're feeling sad, you may say, I'm feeling sad, but they don't notice it or they don't acknowledge it until you're crying hysterically, and they're like, stop crying, you're overreacting, for being sad and crying like this. But the only way you got their attention was by crying that badly. A lot of times as a child, people are taught to either hold in your emotions, or you have to go to the extreme in order to get help from them. So if you have this type of environment, you don't learn proper emotion regulation, and when you don't learn proper emotion regulation, or even problem solving, you don't really learn problem solving either. So they basically have essentially set you up for failure, which then leads to self-invalidation, which self-invalidation is telling yourself that everyone should be able to do this, and why can't I, and just really getting down on yourself for not being able to do something that you believe everyone should. And that's not really cool. So a few invalidating environments would be if, for example, you're very creative. Most people with bipolar disorder tend to be a lot more creative and, like to, do either art or, music or something of that nature. And if the rest of your family is more corporate America, then a lot of times your family members will get down on you for your desire, for creativity. And you then start to think that there's something wrong with you because here they are streamlined to corporate America, and here you just want to color in your coloring books or play your instruments or sing or whatever. And, and you want to pursue that, but you've been kind of taught that feeling like that is wrong because they don't understand it, because they're programmed, they fit in with corporate America and you don't. And so you feel misunderstood because you're different. And, and they feel like your creativity is a waste of time, and, it's invalidating because they're basically saying all the things that you love are not, they're a waste of time and not to pursue it just because they're different than what they are doing with it. Another environment is when parents themselves have they didn't have a lot of validation growing up, and so they have a hard time providing validation to their children because they didn't learn it. They didn't have it growing up. So, if they didn't have it growing up and they didn't learn how to do it themselves, then, how can you pass that on to your children? How are you going to learn, learn it if you've never, or how can you teach it if you've never learned it yourself? So, it creates a bit of a problem in that respect. Parents who have mental health problems or addictions of their own sometimes have trouble providing emotionally safe and healthy environments. And same thing with families who are financially unstable and having a hard time providing the necessities. So, they are having their own struggles and their own things going on. So they don't have the time, to help you with your own things, and they don't have time to teach you, emotional, regulation and problem solving and things like that, because they themselves are struggling with that and, are busy trying to make sure you have a roof over your head. If you're highly emotionally sensitive and are in one of these environments, you could also be adding stress. And if the family is already overstressed, it's just adding even more stress. And sometimes parents, when they get stressed out, they don't intend to, but they can invalidate. And and it's not something they do intentionally. It's just like a knee-jerk kind of reaction. Like, if you fall down and hurt your knee and start crying, and your mom yells at you, "Stop crying!" And even though you're bleeding and it hurts you real bad, your mom is, so stressed out with everything else and has so many other things in her mind that she's just like, stop crying, because the crying is just, making things worse for her. Over time, those types of incidents tend to lead you to believe that there's something wrong with you, because they're constantly taking that type of, those things out on you. And, it's not fair to you, but it happens. And that, in the end, you end up losing out, because it ends up, it doesn't provide validation for you at all. Like, it's giving you the wrong messages. So another And this basically, I don't think I need to really talk too much about this, but abusive environments or situations, whether it's physical abuse or neglect. Neglect is, passive, but it's still abuse. And I mean, those are invalidating, and I don't think I need to really explain much on why they're invalidating. But there are places that you can be invalidated other than home too. I mean, it's not just your parents. I mean, places like school where, the other kids might bully or tease you for crying easily. If that keeps happening repeatedly over and over again, you start getting down on yourself because, just because you're emotionally a little bit more sensitive than others, and it starts to lead to other bad behaviors because you're getting teased and you don't know how to deal with it. Or if you have ADD and your teacher is, accusing you of not trying, or sending notes home all the time saying, little Johnny is not, applying himself. He could be doing so much better. And, and then your mom starts getting down on you, and really you have ADD and it's hard for you to concentrate. But instead of feeling like addressing that it's the ADD, they just keep getting down on you for not trying, and then you over time feel like a failure because they keep telling you you're not trying when it's something more than that. So how does this apply to other illnesses? Well, more than 75% of the mental illnesses in the DSM have difficulties in regulating emotions as one of the criteria. 75%. That's huge. That, 75% of all the illnesses listed in the DSM include difficulties in regulating emotions. So, that's a very big number. So, regulating your emotions is a big part of mental health. Emotional dysregulation tends to lead to emotional avoidance through unhealthy behaviors like substance use, eating disorders, self-harm, and things like that. So, again, it's really important to have the skills to be able to regulate your emotions, and that's what DBT is going to help us learn, so that we can learn the skills that we didn't get to learn growing up. And it may not be that we didn't learn it growing up. We just may not have clicked with us, or something may have happened throughout the course of life that, maybe we experience post-traumatic stress and, shit hit the fan. I'm not gonna lie, it happens. And, we don't remember, situations can change so fast, and that, you forget. You forget all the basics. So, it doesn't mean that you're not going to ever learn them again, or you're never going to have them again. So, so here we are teaching DBT, so you can learn how to do, how to regulate it again. There's hope. There's always hope. Eating disorders, like binge eating disorder and bulimia, they're based on the idea that people who engage in the disordered eating behaviors are doing so because it's an inability to regulate their emotions, and the difficulties stem from childhood and not being taught the skills to regulate their emotions and problem solve, but they're expected to do so. And then when they can't meet those expectations, then they use, the eating disorder to kind of deal with that. They'll eat, and then they purge because the purging makes them feel better. It's like a release. And, that's how they learn to deal with their emotions. It's not a healthy way by any means. So, that's why we need to learn proper ways. But if they're not taught them, then they just go with whatever instinct tells them. For bipolar disorder, I mean, our emotions and moods go up and down like a roller coaster. Emotional dysregulation can occur if we're not taught how to regulate our emotions or problem solve. And just like with borderline personality disorder, can lead to emotional avoidance and unhealthy behaviors. I mean, let's face it, I mean, those of us with bipolar disorder, I mean, how many of us self-harm or have self-harmed? How many had or have eating disorders, substance use or abuse? I mean, those are all, I mean, we deal with things the same way, you know, whether it's bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. I mean, we deal with things the same way. So, I mean, it's all about being taught the skills to regulate and to problem solve. So that's our main goal here, is to teach the skills and get you working on them. The dialectal theory of DBT, the first theory I just talked to you about was the biosocial theory of borderline personality disorder. Yeah. So this next one is the dialectal theory, and it's real quick. It's based on 3 principles, that everything is interconnected and interrelated, which, you know, taking whole systems approach to identifying and managing change, you know, that everything as a whole, it works together. Reality is not static, but is in the process of continuous change, which is true. I mean, every day, every minute, things are changing. And the always evolving truth can be found by integrating or synthesizing differing and possibly opposite views. So basically taking, you know, both sides of the, you know, if you're, you know, they always say, oh, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Well, if you take your side and then the devil's advocate side and kind of merge them together, that's kind of where you find the truth, is the merging of both of them together. So, yeah. I mean, I read all that and reread it all several times trying to figure out what the heck it all meant. But in a nutshell, it just means that thinking dialectically, I know, it's a tongue twister a little bit. Thinking dialectically means looking at both perspectives in a situation, like both sides of an argument, and working toward molding them together. So we have to practice acceptance while also continuing to work towards change. So we have to learn to accept the bad, our bad behaviors or whatever we thought was bad. We need to accept that that's part of us and that's who we are, and then work towards changing that and changing it for the positive and making it better. And lastly, by thinking dialectically, it means that we can recognize that all points of view can have aspects that are both valid and incorrect. So everybody, like all points of view, they're not 100% correct or 100% incorrect. Each point of view has some parts that are correct, some parts that aren't. Regardless, there's nothing out there that's 100% correct or 100% incorrect. There's a little bit of the truth in everything. I think my dad used to say that. Someone used to say that. There's a little bit of truth in everything. Anyway, so that's all the boring theory stuff. So we've had 2 videos and we're on page 15 of the book. So we're making progress. Definitely. It's going a little slowly right now, but it's going to pick up. I promise you the next video is going to pick up. We're really rolling. Yeah. And I did type LOL in my notes to remind myself to make a joke about this. So yeah. So I want to keep these videos kind of short and not overwhelming. So the next video, I'm going to discuss the DBT model, which is basically just the components of it and what each component is, so we can get started on the actual exercises. So I'll talk about those, and maybe a few other factoids will be thrown in the mix. And I promise the good stuff is coming. Mindfulness and how to practice and some exercises, they're coming soon. I promise. But for some people, just knowing the basis and the theory behind the therapy helps them understand it a little bit better, and it makes it easier for them to apply it in their lives because they kind of have a better understanding. So that's why I'm kind of just going through all of this, and I'd rather have give too much information than not enough information and leave you guys hanging. So it's kind of like a one-stop shopping spot. So I'll see you next time, and I promise the material will be a lot more exciting. And if you have any questions or comments or anything else, you can comment on the bottom of the YouTube video, or on Facebook on the Bipolar Hot Mess Facebook page, or on www.bipolarhotmess.com, and leave whatever comments you want, because I kind of like feedback. I want to make sure I'm giving you guys what you want, so feedback is appreciated. I will see you guys soon.